Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
An ultimatum from the Kansas Supreme Court. Lawmakers fix the way schools are funded or classrooms won't reopen in August. Also this week, what's the fix for MU as the Star chronicles expanding woes at Missouri's flagship university? Plus, demolishing every dangerous building in Kansas City. The new plan to rid the city of blight. And angry teachers and state workers as Kansas announces plans to raid pensions to balance the budget. Those stories and more coming up. Hello, I'm Nick Haynes. Delighted to have you with us again as we connect the dots on the big stories making the news on both sides of state line. Dissecting those stories with us from the Kansas City Star, education reporter Murray Rose Williams. From the Pitch, reporter Steve Ockrott. The host of Up to Date on KCUR-FM, Steve Kraske. And Star reporter, columnist and blogger Dave Helling. Now, we begin in Kansas, where the way the state funds its schools through block grants to districts has just been declared unconstitutional. This week, the Kansas Supreme Court rules if state lawmakers don't fix it by June 30th, schools in Kansas will be unable to operate. So what does this ruling actually mean? Does it mean that if lawmakers can't find a new method of funding schools in the next 4 months, schools won't reopen in August, Steve?
That's exactly what it means, Nick. The state Supreme Court is using the ultimate hammer here to compel lawmakers to move ahead and do what they need to do. You know, they've been talking for a couple of years now about reinventing the state school finance formula. They were going to get it done this year. That hasn't happened. But clearly now, this is a stick and a carrot that even lawmakers won't be able to resist.
Isn't it unfair, though, Steve Ockrott, to expect lawmakers to try and now revamp this entire system of school funding in such a short period of time when we know these things are very complicated, and this is just asking for trouble?
No, it's not unfair at all, because this has been going on for years. The legislature knows where the Supreme Court stands on this, and they're saying in 2016 what they said in 2014, that the state has failed to cure this problem, which is the equity, which is to say how school districts are funded from one to the next based on demographics, enrollment, and things like that. And in fact, what the Supreme Court seemed to suggest is that the state has moved in the opposite direction since it warned them to get this right in 2014. So their work is cut out for them.
Murray.
The easiest thing to do is to allow the money to follow the child, which is the way they do it in Missouri. And they've changed that. So that's why they're having a problem. If you allow the money to follow the child, wherever the child goes to school, that child will have whatever they've decided is what it takes to fund or to educate one child. And they've changed that, and they've gotten themselves into a big mess by doing that.
You know, some lawmakers, though, say the problem is that you will never satisfy the courts, though, in Kansas on this question of money. Here's Leawood Senator Jeff Melcher.
It doesn't seem like the courts or the schools are happy regardless how much money we give them. I would imagine if we gave them 100% of the budget, they'd be back suing us again for more money.
Is he onto something there, Dave?
Well, this has been a litigious subject for many, many years, Nick. But as a political matter, the decision by the court yesterday is the easier of the two problems that lawmakers face. The equity part, the fairness, there are really two issues. Is it fair the way we spend money on schools in Kansas, and is it enough? Yesterday's ruling was on, is it fair? And the court sort of indicated that if you put another $50 million, $54 million into the formula, sort of reverted to some old things, you could fix that problem and avoid the June 30th cutoff date. But the question of whether it's enough is also before the court, will be argued later this year. That ruling will really be explosive, because at some point the court may say you need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars more on your schools at a time when the legislature is borrowing to meet its daily obligations. That's really where the rubber will meet the road, and that comes later in the year.
There's a lot of the sky is falling in Kansas, but yet it never always falls, and it just seems unfathomable for me to believe that if you have a child or a grandchild in a classroom anywhere in the state of Kansas, that school is not going to reopen in August if lawmakers don't get their work done by June 30th to fix this.
Well, and I understand that, but I think that's exactly where we're at, and I think the political fallout here is going to be fascinating, Nick. Don't forget, just a decade ago, maybe 15 14 years ago, the state of Kansas was on the brink of a constitutional meltdown over funding of Kansas schools. The court saying spend a lot more money, lawmakers saying, we're not going to go there. They were dealing with this issue through the whole summer. And for a while there, you just had a sense that, which side was going to blink first. Ultimately, lawmakers did. We heard Senator Melcher just speak a few minutes ago. You're going to hear a lot of gnashing of teeth here. Ultimately, lawmakers will come around. But this is going to be an interesting little game here in an election year, no less, Nick.
Okay, I want to return to Kansas in just a moment, but first I want to continue on the education theme, but this time on the Missouri side. The Kansas City Star chronicling this week the mounting problems for Missouri's flagship university. A front-page story begins with this line: the University of Missouri brand is damaged, and the firestorm over racial issues that drove two top leaders from their jobs last fall still smolders. Enrollment is down with close to 1,000 fewer students applying this fall than the year before, and more than 1,500 emails have poured in from alumni threatening to pull or withhold donations. And pouring fuel on the fire is the recently released email from former University of Missouri System President Tim Wolf, blasting MU leaders, including the former chancellor, the board of curators, and even new interim leader Mike Middleton, who he claimed failed miserably as the man in charge of diversity on the Columbia campus. So what about the future? Missouri lawmakers are freezing funding to MU, and for all the talk of diversity, not one member of the current board of curators that controls the university system is African American. Several black members have recently resigned. So Maura, now the focus now is on finding a new head of the University of Missouri system to heal these wounds. Is that asking too much, though? And who would want this job at this point, Murray?
Well, the last part of your question, I can't even answer. I mean, who would want this job? That's a good question. But what curators are telling me is they are happy with what Mike Middleton is doing there. And they are in no rush to try and they're not going to rush and try to find somebody to fill that spot. They're going to take their time and try to find the right person. Obviously, they've had issues with that in the past. I mean, where Wolf came from, he just kind of came out of the blue. I don't even know, no one even knew he was on the program to be the next president. So this time they're really going to have to take their time and try to find somebody who fits, not just pick somebody who someone suggested would be a good president.
But Tim Wolf was a businessman, and he was lauded for his business acumen, and that was considered a great strength for a University of Missouri system. Yet, at the presidential level, we have people raving over having a businessman run the country, as in Donald Trump. Is the bloom off the rose, though, now that we've seen what happened with Tim Wolf about having a businessman and that type of background running a university system without academic credentials?
I think it might be, Nick. I think, the businessman model seems to work well when there aren't any external issues and controversies popping up. But when you have the level of controversy that erupted in Columbia over race, is a businessman, does he have the experience, he or she have the experience to deal with an issue like that? Clearly, in this case, President Wolf did not, and it showed, and that continued to fuel the fire of the student protests over there, and that might change here as we go forward.
I disagree with that. I think that what Wolf failed to do was to understand that he needed to collaborate with his staff to handle that issue. They've had a businessman in charge before. Forsey was in charge.
Yes, the former head of Sprint, Gary Forsey.
Right. Did a beautiful job. What he did was he understood that he was not the smartest man in the room when it came to academia. He was great with finance, but he had people around him who were good at that, and he used them. Wolf apparently did not do that, and that was the problem.
Okay. But now we also have the issue of the Board of Curators. 3 members of the Board of Curators have resigned in the better part of 3 months. What is actually happening there? Now they're all saying privately they were all going off to other things. They had other personal circumstances and so on. Is there something more to that story?
I think that they got in there and all of this blew up and they were like, whoa, this is a lot. I bit off a lot more than I could chew here and I'm going to back out. I think that's what happened. Of course, they're not going to say that. As you said, they're saying that they've gone off to personal things. They are going to have to fill those slots. They've got a big job ahead. They've got their most important job. That's finding a new president.
But there's an angry Missouri legislature who won't even allow the governor to fill some of these slots.
Right. First of all, I'd nominate Murray Williams for president of the MU system. She'd be highly qualified, more qualified than Donald Trump, by the way. No, and you point out something very important, Nick, and that is that higher education broadly is always a political target in a state, primarily because lots of legislators have constituents who don't have kids in school, have never gone to that school, and yet their tax money, millions of dollars in tax money, are going to what they see as elitist institutions. In states like Missouri and Kansas, what they see as liberal elitist institutions. And so the Board of Curators and all the people connected with the University of Missouri system, and for that matter, KU, the University of Kansas, as you know, is in the sights of the legislators in Topeka now for the way it wants to build some things on campus. So you've got to satisfy students, faculty, legislators, the general public, the media. It roils into sports and athletics, and it's a very, very difficult challenge. It'll be very hard for the University of Missouri to find someone who can sort of fill that role and address all those constituencies, and the legislature is a big part of that.
KCPT recently ran the documentary Our Divided City that examined blight and neglect on Kansas City's east side. Now Mayor Sly James and City Manager Troy Schulte have announced bold new vision to eliminate blight in Kansas City by demolishing all of the city's dangerous buildings over the next 2 years. Now, how far does this plan go to fix the systemic problems, though, east of Troost, Steve Vokrut?
Well, it's probably a somewhat minor part. I think symbolically it's probably fairly significant. And there's the question of whether they will follow through with it. You will remember a couple years ago they did a big production about how they were going to knock down 1,000 houses, and they didn't get very far on that. I have a reader who sends me pictures every week or almost every week, of houses that were promised to be knocked down near where he lives that haven't been knocked down. So they've made this budget available. Will they actually get to it? That remains to be seen.
Where is all the money coming from now to do this when in the past there hasn't been any money?
Well, they're going to borrow the money, Nick. They're going to borrow, $10 million in bonding to get this done. And I agree with Steve. This is more symbolic. I'm not sure it's a game changer when it comes to reducing crime on the east side. Keep in mind, just a few years ago, this community and the federal government spent millions of dollars on the Green Impact Zone at the behest of Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, cleaning up neighborhoods, new sidewalks, new curbs. One initiative, one reason for doing that was to sort of reduce crime, clean up neighborhoods, make everybody feel prouder of where they live. And I'm not sure that had a huge impact on the crime rate in this town.
The city's saying that this is the most robust economy they've been in a long time. So that's why they're getting the resources to do this, because we've never had better financial situation. So what has actually changed for the city there, Dave?
Well, some revenue streams have solidified, but that's really a red herring, Nick. $10 million in a $1.5 billion budget is not a lot of money. You get the sense that City Hall could have found this money in the past had it chosen to do so. And in fact, Steve talked about 2 years ago when the mayor, or whenever it was that he had the news conference, I remember covering a news conference with Emanuel Cleaver in front of a dangerous building saying, hey, they're all coming down. We're going to use gambling money and tear down all the structures. And it never happened because that money gets diverted into other things. This has never been a priority. We'll see now if it is a priority. While I agree to some degree with my colleagues about the symbolism of this, I think it's important too. I think if you go on the east side, some neighborhoods are dangerous. For kids, it's just not an acceptable situation. And I do think that there is something beyond symbolism that if they do execute this program will mean a better community and better neighborhoods, particularly in places that need it.
The Missouri Senate has voted unanimously to ban cities, counties, and police departments from setting traffic ticket quotas. This all comes in response to Ferguson, where it was shown that city there was raising large portions of its budget from traffic tickets and fines. The bill makes it a crime for any public official to require a police officer to write a certain number of citations and prohibits supervisors from suggesting that subordinates issue more tickets. In a separate action, Missouri senators have placed a cap on fines and court costs at $200 and eliminated jail sentences for certain traffic and municipal offenses. While most Missourians will salute the move, Kansas City leaders are alarmed about what this might mean to them. They worry that reducing penalties for municipal offenses in Missouri will hurt efforts to deal with, yes, abandoned homes and nuisance properties. So is the argument here that if you fine just $200, a lot of people wouldn't bother to fix these problems, Steve?
I don't know. I mean, to suggest that a $200 fine isn't really meaningful. I mean, I just paid one for a traffic infraction myself just this week, and
What'd you do, Steve?
Improper left turn. And so I'm not going to do that again. But cities need to be very careful. And in fact, there used to be a law, it's called the Max Creek Law, that said that you couldn't derive a certain percentage of revenue. And that was a toothless law, and there are many, particularly smaller cities, that rely on these speed traps and things of that nature to produce revenue. And I think cities need to be very careful about how much they want to rely on income coming from this, because it creates situations where, particularly in less wealthy areas, where it becomes very onerous and burdensome on people.
In fact, Kansas City has been lobbying to exempt themselves from this law because they think it will cause so many problems for them, and that cities are very different than rural areas.
Yeah, I think the argument here is that some of these absentee landlords, Nick, own dozens and dozens of homes they're not keeping up, and a $200 fine is just a nick on the backside. It's not a substantial enough penalty to propel them to do what they need to do to clean up these properties. So I think that's the argument that Mayor James and others are making.
You know, I said we return to Kansas, and we're going to do so right now because the state of Kansas has diverted about $1.4 billion allotted to maintain the city's highways to help balance its budget. We've talked about that story before. Now, this week, lawmakers find another way to make ends meet. The House voting to take it from state pensions. The state will short by nearly $200 million its contribution to the pensions for teachers and government workers. The governor's office says there's no cause for alarm. The money will be paid back by the end of September, and with interest. So what's to get bent out of shape about then, Dave?
Well, the Kansas pension system is a disaster. It's been underfunded for years. The governor has made some political hay out of his attempts to shore up that system. They've borrowed some money, done some other things to provide funding for the pension system. I think the last time I looked, I think they're at 65% fully funded, which is really not in good shape for a public pension. But it is another symptom of the inability of Kansas to pay its bills. And that's really what, as a political matter, what people are paying attention to.
But isn't the alternative to this, though, making across-the-board cuts and the kinds of cuts that people don't like, you know, cutting back on schools and other things like that?
Well, the other alternative is to raise taxes on the people who have their taxes zeroed out by the 2013 package. That's what the fundamental issue in Kansas has been now for 3 years, going on 4. And this is just yet another indication that that decision has affected pensions, education, transportation, health care. The whole gamut of the services provided by the state of Kansas have been impacted by that cut.
The concern here most specifically, Nick, is that, hey, this money might get paid back later on this summer, but what if it's not? Revenues in Kansas not showing much growth, the budget having all kinds of issues. The concern among the pro-pension crowd is that, hey, this money may not be coming down the pike once it's gone, and that's what they're worried about.
Steve.
I think as a general rule at this point in Kansas is when its leaders say that they shouldn't be alarmed is probably when you should probably start being alarmed.
All righty, you've heard that old adage, haven't you? If it's not broke, don't fix it. So why is the Kansas City, Missouri School District announcing this week plans to close what some say is one of the better performing schools in the district, Wendell Phillips Elementary? That's the school closest to the 18th and Vine Jazz District, and parents and local residents are angry. Last fall, the Kansas City, Missouri School District announced plans to close Southwest High School and 2 elementary schools, Attucks and Satchel Paige. Now, Attucks is staying open, and Wendell Phillips is on the cutting block. What's behind that story, Murray?
Well, Attucks is a newer school. Wendell Phillips is like 50 years older than Attucks. And the district does not have the funds to upgrade Wendell Phillips. So what they're doing is lifting everyone from Wendell Phillips, putting them in Attucks, and then they're going to give Wendell Phillips to turn it into a charter school. Charter schools have more leeway for getting private funds so they can fix the building. So that's kind of what they're doing, and it's all about money.
Now, I find it interesting with all of the anger and concern over this issue. Yeah, you just reported just very recently that we have upcoming spring elections for school board, and virtually no one whatsoever is running for those elections, and almost everyone is going to be a write-in candidate. So all this anger and concern, and yet nobody's interested in running for school board?
That's correct. Nobody's interested in running for school board, and it's really going to be a mess when they get a ton of write-in candidates. I have no idea how they're going to sort that out. It's It's happened before where they've had writing candidates. In fact, Eric West was a writing candidate. So it just remains to be seen what's going to happen there.
Governance of the Kansas City, Missouri School District has been an issue for 20 years, perhaps more, in terms of recruiting candidates, the quality of candidates, and the focus of the public on school board elections is just not very high. It's very difficult. You know, we talk about how the school district is run every 4 years when mayoral candidates run, when they really don't have any direct role in how the schools are run. It may be time for Kansas City to take a hard look at whether a school board setup is the best way to run the schools. And maybe there's a better way to appoint members or do some other things, because I think it has suffered to some degree by the inability to elect a board of directors that's qualified over many, many, many years.
And just to underscore the point, as Murray just said, this is not the first time this has happened. You know, to me, given all the attention, all the angst, all the worry about the plight of the Kansas City, Missouri School District, to have this dearth of candidates now, people who are willing to sign up and put their names on the line to run for the city school board, that is just appalling. It's a huge, I think, another setback for this district.
A judge this week blocks efforts to put the new downtown convention hotel on the citywide ballot, delivering a blow to critics who question how the city is spending its money. And another big ballot measure is threatened this week too. Plans to raise Missouri's lowest in the nation tobacco tax is now embroiled in abortion politics. The question is why? The statewide ballot proposal would ask voters, would you be willing to raise Missouri's tax on tobacco 60 cents per pack and use the new money to pay for early childhood education and preventative health programs? So where does abortion come into it?
The convenience store operators have made sure that it's been injected into this because they don't like the idea of a higher tobacco tax. And so they've sort of tried to construe some of the language in the ballot measure as being related to abortion. Whether the public is convinced to back away from a tobacco tax increase on that basis is not completely clear.
And even the people at the Stowers Institute for Life Science Research are also upset about this too. Is that because they smoke at a higher rate than the rest of the population, Steve Fockroth?
No, that's not the reason. This tobacco tax is going to be, you would think at this day and age that it's the sort of thing that the public would go for, but it's this, Missourians defeated it last time it came up by a fairly wide margin.
By all of this muddiness going on, though, is this going to help torpedo this effort, though, Steve?
Yes. I think these initiatives have failed at the ballot box in recent years. There's been a big effort to get it done this year, but when you start throwing in abortion politics in this kind of conservative state, not a good sign.
Okay, well, the Vietnam War ended more than 40 years ago, so why are questions now surfacing this week about the role of Missouri Senator Roy Blunt during that time? According to the Kansas City Star, Blunt, who is running for re-election to the U.S. Senate this year, has always maintained he had a high draft lottery number and was not called to be served. But Dave Helling, you're reporting a different story this week.
Well, it's partially true. He did have a high number and was 1A when that number came up, but that's not the whole story, and that's the problem for Roy Blunt. He's told people in Missouri for years that he had a high number and in essence got lucky and stayed out of Vietnam. But the reality is he had 3 student deferments, 2 in 1968, 1 in 1969. Those deferments, which he had to ask for, are the reason he wasn't drafted in 68 or 69 when he was 18 and 19 years old, and he has not been completely forthcoming on that.
But does anybody care? This is 40 years on, Steve Fockroth, and we just saw video of Roy Blunt this very week claiming a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Missouri Veterans for Foreign Wars organization. This is a man who clearly is viewed very highly by veterans.
Well, I think Blunt's opponents will care and try to make some hay out of it. These types of issues come up a lot with political candidates. They came up with George Bush and his commitment to service when he was running for president. It's even come up with Trump to a certain degree. To the degree to which it really sticks to him, it's more the stuff of political ads, it seems to me.
Steve?
Yeah, and I agree with that. This is probably not a game changer, Nick, but I think anytime the basic integrity of a public official, a long-standing public official like Roy Blunt, is questioned, that hurts a little bit. And this also plays to the strength of Jason Kander, his Democratic opponent, who is a military veteran, a recent military veteran. This will allow him to brandish those credentials once again before the voters. And it also, again, it gives him one more argument that he's a serious candidate in this race and raises questions about whether, in fact, Roy Blunt will win re-election or not.
Just very quickly, it's an unforced error for Roy Blunt because he could have simply said, I got 3 deferments, no one would have thought about it. But by trying to mislead reporters in this race, or at least arguably mislead reporters, it's a bigger problem.
Finally, this week, we answer some of your questions as we delve into the KCPT mailbag. Rod in Kansas City wants to know, you didn't mention on Week in Review that Mike Sanders is still getting $10,000 a month, even though he left the Jackson County Executive Office. Are you too buddy-buddy with him because he appears on Ruckus? Well, yes, Mike Sanders abruptly resigns as leader of Jackson County government so he can now work in a private practice law firm in Independence. But what about him getting $10,000 a month from his former employer? Is there anything irregular about that, Steve?
I think part of that's to help smooth over the transition because he had a lot of information about how the county was run at an executive level. I don't think it looks too great. I don't think it's a great as people think about how taxpayer money is spent.
It's not indefinite, is it? I mean, there's a
6 months.
6 months.
6 months.
I don't. If it would have been ongoing, it would have been a problem. But a 6-month contract.
And Judy in Kansas City wants to know about those isolation rooms she's been reading about in area school district where kids are sent to cool off with all the media attention. Did the Independence School District back off and abandon those 15 isolation rooms? Or has administrators ignored the complaints of furious parents? Murray?
They still have isolation rooms. A parent has filed a complaint with DFS, and DFS, the Department of Family Services, is doing a review of the isolation rooms. There's supposed to be a report coming out.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to this week's news reviewers. Weekdays from 11 to noon on Up to Date on KCOR-FM, Steve Kraske, and on the Education Beat at the Kansas City Star. We're thrilled to have Murray Rose-Williams with us. At the Pitch, Steve Vokrot, and the Star's Dave Helling. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.